Okay, well, just so you know, I am recording
Okay,
now.
official.
So why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself and we'll start with that.
Sure. My name is Priscilla, and I am a new mom. My daughter is going to be 3 years old this year, which is crazy. She's 2.5. So she is a pure COVID baby. I found out at the end of March that I was pregnant, and it was a surprise.
So you found out you were pregnant basically when like COVID just hit, like
Yeah,
when it was like at the peak,
yeah.
but nobody knew what was going on.
Yeah, it was like we had just finally, we had just started to take it seriously because I think we started to hear about it like in February. I remember hearing about it, but it seemed very far removed. But then by March, it was like, hello, reality check. And then I found that I was pregnant. It was wild.
Yeah. I remember the day when you and I went to walk around the pond and you had a mask on and I didn't. And I remember it being like a whole thing where I was like, is she gonna be okay with me not wearing a mask? And you were already like fully in, which made sense. I mean, because you were pregnant already at that point. So
Yeah, I was definitely hyper cautious. I think, that biological instinct to want to keep your baby safe was full force the minute I found out. And then I was, I'm already, I guess, a person with anxious tendencies, but I totally I leaned into that like 100%. And yeah, I definitely took extra precautions. I remember that day clearly. I think I was like, that was maybe in June or something. So I was already 3 months.
it was like, yeah, it was warm. It was already like the pandemic was already like going.
Yeah.
And but I think like the outside aspect of it didn't make me so nervous, but I can obviously totally understand, why you felt the way that you
Yeah.
did. But it's crazy to think that that was like 3 years ago now.
I know. More. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the main things that I was really hoping to discuss with you and why thank you for taking the time to be on this episode of the podcast. I think the one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about is, your choice to give birth naturally. I think it's really cool. I've told you before, I think it's really brave. For myself, I'm like, wow, that I have a special level of respect for women who choose to take that route. Talk to me. So I mean, like, I feel like obviously the pandemic gave people like extra anxiety in regarding being in hospital environments, but you were feeling some of those things before too. Can you talk to me a little bit about, your thought process on it and how, you came to make that decision?
Yeah. So the decision to have natural childbirth actually came to me when I was in college. Not that I wanted to have a baby then, but I saw the documentary that Ricky Lake produced, or she helped produce, The Business of Being Born. I think I told you about that. Yeah. So that
Hmm.
documentary really opened my eyes to a lot of realities that I had no idea were real. And from then I thought, okay, well, if I ever do decide to have a child, I'm definitely going to explore my options. And then the pandemic happened, and so we were hearing stories of women who had to birth alone. They couldn't have partners in with them or doulas or anybody, and that was so scary to me. Even more, it was like I need to go on this path for sure. It resonates, and now more than ever, it felt like a necessity because there was no way I was going to put myself in an environment that I was going to walk into already feeling unsafe. That would have just, I think, mentally, I wouldn't have been able to give birth, I think, in that kind of mindset. So those, two things for sure influenced me a lot.
Did your like your closest friends, your family, did they have any Well, like, what was their take on that? Were they like pro? Were they against? Were they just kind of to you what makes you feel better? Did they have an opinion on that?
Yeah, well, everyone has an opinion about everything. And then once you have a
Yeah.
kid, it's like all of a sudden people think they have like the right to express them freely. So yeah, I mean, there were definitely some kind of like raised eyebrows, like why would you choose this when you can be totally safe in a hospital? Why would you want to feel pain? And everyone has an opinion, and a lot of people feel entitled to just express their opinions freely without being prompted. So yeah, I mean, there were definitely some questions and raised eyebrows, and I think a lot of the questions are totally valid, right? Like, why would you try to give birth in a place where if you needed an emergency C-section, you couldn't have one? Why not already set yourself up so that you don't have to worry about moving, and why feel the pain if we have modern science to alleviate the pain, so you don't have to go through all of that. And totally valid questions. And then thankfully I also have surrounded myself by a really like-minded tribe, and I did also receive a lot of support from a lot of close friends and family members. I have a cousin who her last baby, she actually did she had a home birth in her bathtub with midwives and doulas. So I had her within the family to kind of help have my back. And then, of course, a really good friend of mine who I grew up with, she had her last baby at the birthing center where I actually ended up giving birth and working with. So I think I had both sides, which was good. And ultimately, I still decided to go with what I knew was best for me and my baby.
How did what was it like when you went to your GYN? What was their reaction? How did you bring it up, and how did that conversation go?
Well, so not my GYN, my first pediatrician. When she
Okay.
found out that I was going this way, she definitely had questions and thoughts and opinions. I think that there is a large percentage of the medical community who kind of look down on midwives and doulas, like if they're, I don't know, witchcraft or something. I don't really get it. But so I think that unfortunately my experience with my first pediatrician was a little bit of that. So yeah, it was a little uncomfortable, but ultimately, once she realized that all of the questions that she had in regards to Phoenix's first, when they first take the baby and weigh them and measure and everything else they're supposed to do, I had all of the paperwork. And I think once my pediatrician realized that I was in great hands and I had phenomenal care, and Phoenix had a great start to her, outside experience, she changed her tune and was supportive and fine.
Okay. And your GYN's office were always
actually, so I was
board?
going to the midwives for GYN annual appointments. They see they see women too for.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. All right.
Huh. So they knew me. I mean, I hadn't been seeing them like for years and years, but they definitely already knew me, and thankfully they accepted my insurance that I had. And so I was able to do everything, all of my prenatal care and everything through them.
So just to be clear, through the entire process, from like the moment you found out you were pregnant to the moment that you had your baby, you never actually set foot in a standard GYN office?
No. The only time.
Oh wow! I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay.
So actually,
I just assumed that it was always like the GYN office, and then you also go to a doula. I didn't know that was like a full functioning operation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I will say, full disclosure, when I first found out that I was pregnant, I panicked, and I went to a Planned Parenthood to confirm that I was pregnant. Like, I don't know, made sure that I peed on a stick correctly.
Yeah.
Like, somebody tell me that this is not happening right now. I was so scared. And then, I think my only experience with hearing about women who were pregnant and it being a risk was when that whole Zika crisis was happening. And, you know, a lot of babies were coming up like really disfigured or very sick. And I was like, is this a really terrible time to have a baby? And I wanted to know all of my options. And yeah, I went to Planned Parenthood to confirm I was pregnant and just to know what all of my options were. And of course, you know, nobody knew what COVID was the impact that it was going to have on any of us, let alone, you know, the babies. So anyway, yeah. But yeah, besides that, I mean, I didn't go to a GYN, a hospital, nothing. Thankfully.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
cool. That's interesting. I had no idea. I thought that was just like a supplementary thing that women did in addition to that. So, how did you find this office in East Steeple? It was like through your best
My
friend?
best friend's sister had her second
Okay.
child with them years before. Her daughter now is like 16. So there was a
Yeah.
possibility that they weren't even open, because when I did search, I searched for midwives in New York City or midwives in like the tri-state area, and there were so few options. And thankfully this place was still open. I think in New York City it's the only standalone birthing center in New York City. Every other place that's, you know, with midwives, it's either with like affiliated with a hospital,
Mm-hmm.
or like someone comes to your home and it's private, totally private. You pay someone individually.
Got you. How do the costs compare to like do you know
No.
like how the costs compare of something like that versus like going to a
I have no
hospital?
idea, to be honest. Thankfully, you know, they accepted my insurance, and I
Okay.
did not pay $1 for anything
Okay.
revolving around Phoenix. And it was very efficient, so I was really fortunate.
So one thing, I'm thinking about like my experience, and I'm curious to know how that went for you. Was when I had my baby, I went like the traditional route through the hospital, through the GYN office. They had me throughout the pregnancy. They had me do blood work like a million times. I felt like at certain points I had to go like every 2 weeks to do blood work. Did you have to do the same?
I had to do blood work, but I will say that the midwives that I worked with made it a point to stress that a lot of the sonograms, a lot of the testing, a lot of the initial screenings and stuff like that, like it was kind of in excess here.
Yeah.
So I did all of that stuff, but like whatever the bare minimum is allowed is what I experienced. So I can't
Okay.
say, I don't think I ever remember giving blood every 2 weeks. It was more like
Hmm.
maybe once a month at some point, the maximum. Or like, you know, when they have to do the sugar test, which is like at a certain
Yeah.
point. God, it's
Hmm.
crazy how much I don't remember already.
There's so much. There's like so much that happens that I feel like has been completely just erased from my
Same.
memory. It's an
But
interesting
even like
thing,
with
but
sonograms, like
okay.
I stopped my last sonogram. You know, you have the big one that makes sure that they have all the organs formed. I think that's like 20 weeks. And then because
Hmm.
I was over or 35 plus, I had to get the additional cardio test at a certain time to make sure the heart had all like its chambers and stuff. Then once that was done, I think I got like one more sonogram, and then I didn't get sonograms for the last trimester at all. Isn't that crazy to think?
Yeah, that is pretty
Yeah.
crazy. But then again, I'm trying to remember like how many times did I go? I feel like I had to go a lot in the beginning, like the first few months. Then it was kind of relaxed a little bit in the middle. But the last trimester, I feel like I had to go back to going
Right.
constantly, every few weeks. Yeah, I would imagine there's just like a lot less medical intervention in
Totally.
that with that kind of setup.
Totally.
So
Yeah, it's not.
cool.
They
All
were
right.
fine to like
So
write the prescription if I wanted them, but then I asked them like, "Is it really necessary?" They were like, "No." And they would measure me, you know, every time I would visit. I guess they're like old school with like the tape measure to make sure that the baby was growing and everything.
yeah.
And I felt the baby all the time, so I didn't feel like compelled to go get sonograms all the time.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about the
Oh my
day.
gosh. So, well, it started the Wednesday before. So I gave birth, it was a Friday. So Wednesday night was when I felt
Okay.
my first contraction at like 10 o'clock at night. And I remember I was
Okay.
walking my dog and I felt my first contraction and I had to pause and I was like, Shiloh, I need you to just chill out for a moment. Um, and yeah, so I went into labor. I guess that was it. That Wednesday night, and then all day Thursday, I labored at home. I should also mention that I was working with doulas. So throughout my pregnancy, in addition to my midwives and doulas, I also had doulas. I took like birthing classes and I did a bunch of research online. And so I felt so prepared and empowered to be at home as long as possible, which I think was like anyone who's pregnant that I know, I'm always like, you have to take these birthing classes with these women. Like I give full credit to them to make me feel like I was able to be like, I got this. And I did. I labored at home by myself. So come Friday around midnight, I would say, the quality of my contractions totally changed. I felt this primal urge to push. And that's when I knew. I was like, okay, it's time to go. So we got a ride to the birthing center. We got there around 1 o'clock in the morning. When the midwives admitted me, my water had broke in the car on the way to the birthing center. Because when I got there, I was like, I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry. I guess I peed on myself on my way here. And the midwife was like, nope,
Yeah.
that's your water broke. I'm like, oh, I was fully dilated by the time I got to the birthing center, which the midwife was like, oh, great job. Like, anytime you,
You're ready to
yeah, she was
go.
like,
Yeah.
anytime you feel the urge to push, go with it. You don't have to worry about trying to hold back because you're fully dilated. Okay, great, because I feel the urge to push very strongly. And I started in the shower because I wanted the tub to be full, and that took some time. But I felt the need to be, in with water on me. I should mention that while I was laboring at home, there were a few times where like I took a bath and just like relaxed in the bath or took a shower. So water played a really big part. Um,
So that's a question I had for you, because you labored for 3 days straight. I feel like I labored for like without the drugs for like an hour and it was painful. What was your pain
oh,
levels like in those
well,
three
it's like it
days?
wasn't quite 3 days because from Wednesday night into Thursday night, that was a day. Thursday night, okay, maybe, but you know what it is because then those early contractions, they're pretty spaced out. I would have a contraction. I'm like, oh fuck, that's terrible. Then it would just alleviate for a little bit, and I was just like, I don't know. It's so crazy how in tune to my body I got instantly that I just really listened to my body. And like I said, I had taken these classes, so I knew some positions to be in to help loosen up my hips, for example. My partner, if I needed at the time, like a massage in a certain area, like squeeze the tailbone, all of these different techniques that I had learned that helped. And then it was just like, I don't know. I just like put my mind, you meditate, you know how it is when
Yeah.
you're able to just focus in on the breath.
Hmm. Like a
Like a
mind over
mind over
matter
matter.
kind of
and
thing.
and it's intense, and when the contractions get closer together and you're like, when is this over? But a friend of mine who also had gone the natural route a couple of years prior said something to me that I think was really helpful. She said, look, whatever your 10 is, you're gonna get there in terms of pain. Like, you're gonna get to 10, but your 10 is your 10 and you'll know what to expect. It's not going to get worse than your 10. And she was right. Like, you get to the point where you feel like, am I going to die? Am I going to just pass out or whatever? And your body just, you hold on, and your body, it just knows what it needs to do, and you just breathe, and and you shift if you need to, and you hold, and that's it. And then it passes, and then you just have a moment where you just take a breath, and then you get ready for it again.
At what point during the 3 days did you get to the 10?
I don't know. I feel like it all felt like a 10. It all felt like variations of
Okay.
10. No, that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely by the time I felt the urge to push where I had no control, I remember I was walking to try to go to the bathroom, and without even thinking, my pants were down and I was holding onto something and I was pushing. And I was like, whoa, what was that? And I was like, let's go. It's time to go. Probably then I was probably at 10. Like, looking back, I probably could have been at the birthing center, a couple of hours before I actually got there. But alas.
Alas,
it
worked out. Okay. All right. So then tell me, so 3 days later, now you're getting to the birthing center. You're like ready to go. So talk to me about that. So you're there. You're in the room. How many people are you with?
So they only allowed 2 people to go with me. So I had her dad and my doula, and then it was 2 midwives.
Okay.
With me, that's 5 people total. Everyone had a mask. I was the only one that was allowed to not wear a mask. There are no drugs. So the way that the rooms are set up, every room has its own bathroom, shower, and some have like shower tub. My room had only a standing shower, but I also had the big tub, like the pool.
How big is this facility? How many rooms in total would you say? Or like approximately, I'm just curious.
So the Brooklyn Birthing Center, at the time that I was going, coincidentally, had the Jazz Center that they opened up, which was in Manhattan, like down the block from New York Presbyterian, or some big hospital. I forgot the name. So I gave birth at the Jazz Center in Manhattan because I wanted to be as close to the hospital.
I love that. You gave birth at the Jazz Center. I love that.
You actually really thought about that. It's true.
That's amazing. Okay.
And she likes to dance, so maybe, that'll be something. Like,
I mean, giving birth at a jazz center definitely sounds way more fun than giving birth at a hospital. So
yeah, it was pretty cool. Okay. They had all these like peanut shaped, what do you call them? The inflatable ball things. So just to help. But anyway, I'm just gonna take water. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I knew I wanted the tub to be full, and it wasn't when I got there. So they spent time filling the tub, and I was in the shower pushing. And then after a while, I got tired of being in the shower. So I went into the tub as it was being filled, spent some time there. So I got there like around 1, and then, my daughter was born at like 6:30 in the morning. So the actual like pushing part took about 5 hours. And, I was exhausted. You don't feel like eating. I hadn't eaten since like, I don't know, Wednesday lunchtime. I was just, whatever my body felt like it wanted to do, that's what we did. So after the shower, I wanted to be on the bed for a little bit. I think I just wanted to lay down. So I was just laying down for a while. I did spend some time pushing on my back the traditional way, or the way that you think of. That was fine. And then I spent a lot of time actually on my knees, reaching over the bed with her dad on the other side. So we were like counterbalancing each other, which helped a lot. I was kind of like in a squat position. Okay. And that's when I experienced the Ring of Fire.
Okay, talk about that. Let's talk about that. That's the one thing that nobody knows about. Well, some select a few do, but
the Ring of Fire is
no drugs. No drugs. Ring of Fire, ladies and gentlemen.
No drugs. Reminder: no drugs. The Ring of Fire is that thing that you have no idea about until you become pregnant, and then all of a sudden, out of the woodworks, all of these women are like, "Yeah, the Ring of Fire, the Ring," and you're like, "What?
Yeah. The best kept secret of the game.
Yeah, this podcast has to expose the Ring of Fire, Lex. Okay.
I think the name of this podcast episode is going to be The Ring of
Yes,
Fire.
let's do it. I co-sign. But the Ring of Fire
Yeah.
is when the baby's head is just starting to crown, aka come out of your vagina. And it's a very, the name is very appropriate for what it feels like. Because it burns. It's literally your skin being stretched to the point where the baby's about to come out. And so I'm in this position, and the midwife is like, you can feel the baby's head. Do you want to feel the baby's head? Now, before, when you were like coming up with your birthing plan, my doula had asked me if I wanted a mirror to put down there so that I can see the baby coming out. And I said, no, I have.
No way. That's too much. I'm already doing a lot.
I'll meet the baby when the baby's ready to come out, because I didn't know the sex. The sex was a surprise. So I was like, but yeah, I don't want the mirror. So when the midwife was like, do you want to touch her head? I was like, yeah, sure. And I went and I felt the little like tuft of hair, and it like freaked me out. I don't know. It's like, something about that freaked me out. It played with my head a little bit. Things slowed down a little bit because I think it hit me then. This is for real.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this
like
person's
what I'm
coming.
doing, there's a baby on the other side of this,
Yeah. It's not just going to be like over,
Yeah.
I'm going to go home and go to sleep. And no, this is life-changing here right now.
Right.
Okay.
So that was the turning point. I think that was when I had my first out-of-body experience. So I had 2 out-of-body experiences, which I guess is common. There's like all these endorphins and hormones pumping, and adrenaline just like pumping through your body. So I had my first out-of-body experience, but came back, and I remember I was like, can you just pull the baby out, please? I give you permission. Can you pull the baby? I think if I were in the hospital, that's probably the point where I would have been like, just cut me open, please. Like, whatever you have to do. And that's when the midwife was like, no, we cannot. That's how you know this is it. You're ready. Just, you have to just trust yourself,
Would you say that was a moment where you maybe for a split second, I should have just gone to the hospital and got the drugs? Like, did you think that for a minute, or were you solid the whole time?
So when I think the exam right before I gave birth, the midwife said, oh, I'm pretty sure that we're allowing our patients to have laughing gas, nitrous oxide, in labor, so that it could help. So I think at that point I was like, can I have some of that nitrous oxide or whatever it was? And
Yeah, let's do a little
I'm
bit
so
of drugs.
sorry, that's only at the Brooklyn location. And maybe at that moment, I was like, why?
You should have been like, can you play some jazz music, maybe?
I don't know. But I do remember that.
Yeah.
I think because they realized, that I was, at that point, that one of the midwives came with a very warm cloth and put it on my, like, I never know how to say that. The perineum? Whatever.
Yeah.
That area to help.
Yeah.
And when she did that, a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh yeah, the tub, go in the water. Like my higher self, whatever you want to call it, was like, get your ass in the tub now. And I was like, okay. So now imagine the baby's head is coming out of my vagina, and I'm on my knees, remember? Or I'm squatting, My partner and the midwife, the doula, they come on either side of me, and they like help me stand up. And I walked to the tub, it was maybe only, I don't know, maybe 3 feet away. But the way that I walked, I think I enacted this for you. If you can try to imagine shuffling your feet, right? And the only way I was moving forward was I was curling my toes, like little by little, curling my toes. And then where I curled my toe, I would shuffle my feet. curl, curl, curl toe, shuffle my feet. Like that's how I walked. I don't really know how to explain it more articulate in a more articulate
Yeah.
way, but it was just a very powerful moment because women, we're like so amazing. Here I was, like the baby's literally falling out of myself, and I had the strength to get my ass into the water pool, like lifting my legs up. That was a whole chore. Anyway, but so I got into the tub, and the minute I sat down, Lex, and the water was so warm, my entire body just like whatever tension I felt, gone. And I just like relaxed, and how exhausted I felt started to really sink in. And my body even gave me a break. It was like my contractions stopped for a couple of minutes. And I was leaning back, and then I think this is when I had my second out of body experience. I came back, and I had a conversation with my higher self or whoever, and then I had one powerful contraction where my whole body like convulsed, like exorcist style, and I was like, "Whew, what the fuck?" And then it felt like someone, because I was in the pool like leaning back, and then it felt like someone picked my legs up, and I put my legs on the other side of the pool, like the stirrups that you have in the hospital. And I just remember the next contraction I had, I pushed with my feet against the pool, and the baby came right out in one shot. No head and body. It was like that second contraction shot her out. I was like, I have to. I'm tired. That's it. And she came out. It was really intense. But I will say that, when you do research or you talk to women who decide to do like a natural childbirth without meds, that point where I felt my body relax and in the pool, the amount of euphoria I felt in that moment, it was like a feeling that you can't describe. Like if you can try to bottle that feeling up and turn it into a drug, people would pay a lot of money for that feeling of just like whatever comes over you in that moment before the baby comes, that you need to just like push. It's very powerful what we're capable of. And what you say about like, oh, being brave to not take medicine, I actually think, yes, I agree with you, it is brave, but I also think giving birth in general is brave. And trust in the epidural and that whole process is its own badge of bravery. And I was very scared. I was actually more scared of doing what you did than doing what I did. Isn't that just interesting? How like perspective.
No, you're right. It's interesting that you say it like that, because now that you're saying it like that, it actually it resonates with me in my mind, because I guess there are things that I had to do as well. Like, I mean, thankfully I've never had to like even stay at a hospital before I was giving birth. So just that in itself was like, oh my God, I'm staying in a hospital for a few days. This is kind of scary, and all the procedures, and the epidural it's a shot in your spine, which is it just I remember watching a video, like I think while I was pregnant, and it was like an Instagram video where there was a doctor, and he was like, let me show you what an epidural needle looks like. And he's like, here's a regular needle and it's like this. Here's like some other needle and it's like this. And here's the epidural needle and it was like this long. So no, you're making a fair point. I suppose there are just like it just depends on what your fear is, what your fear boundaries are, and what. So I guess like in my case, I was more afraid of the things that happen naturally, where you were more afraid of the things that happen unnaturally. That's interesting. I guess the fears, they're not necessarily to be compared side by side. It's just a different thing.
Exactly. It's totally different. Yeah. And that's super brave on a totally different level, because C-sections are a major surgery, and I don't think people talk about that enough and give enough credit to the whole experience of what that's like, giving birth in that way, whether by choice or not, and the recovery and everything. It's just giving birth is amazing. There's a reason why, you have this innate respect for pregnant women. It's because you're creating life. You're, like, what greater mystery are we so connected to than that process? It's crazy.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I hear you. It's like the ultimate miracle. So talk to me about afterwards. So now the baby came out, you're laying in the pool. What happened next?
So the midwives definitely support the placenta to be fully, the placenta the whole time is this organ that's giving your baby all of the nutrients that it needs to thrive and grow. So they support the placenta releasing every single thing that it has in it left to give to the baby before removing or giving birth to the placenta. So, and also like to be bonded skin to skin immediately for, as long as possible. So, baby's on my chest. It was announced that I had a girl. Super excited. And I'm just holding her. And it took her a little while to cry. And I like immediately went into mom, like, is she okay? They're like, she just had a really intense journey. Give her a moment. So I'm like rubbing her and she's crying like, Mom, get off me. That was cool.
Already straight to teenager, like born and straight to teenager.
So that was cool. So I held her for a few moments. They had me get out of the pool and walk over to the bed, still attached with the placenta. So that was fun, shuffling over to the
yeah.
So then I'm laying on the bed. I'm holding her for a little while, and then after the placenta has finished draining, they hand baby over to dad so that he can get skin to skin with her. And then now their all attention is on me. I have to burst the placenta, which ended up being, it felt way more painful than giving birth to like a human. And I think it's because all of the adrenaline and endorphins or whatever that your body is pumped with to give birth to the baby just goes away or something. And then all of the sensations that your body was protecting you from are gone. So you start feeling, when you have a cut that you don't know you have, but then when you look down and you see yourself bleeding, it's like, ow, oh my God, that hurts so much. So yeah, it was like that. And I ended up slightly tearing when that final push. So I did get some stitches after giving birth to the placenta. No numbing, anything. So that was also really painful. But then once that was done, so one midwife was doing that to me, and then the other midwife, once the placenta was born, and then dad cut the umbilical cord. And then while I'm like getting stitched up, the other midwife has the baby, measuring the baby, weighing, doing all of that stuff. And then once I get the baby back, I was taught how to breastfeed. So I started breastfeeding.
So they never took her out of the room?
Everything was
okay. So that's like one major difference, that I'm hearing now. Because in my case in the hospital, I birthed her, then they did, first of all, they cut the umbilical cord right away. They didn't even give it 10 minutes like what you're talking about, where it has to drain. That didn't happen. And then she laid on me for a few minutes. Then they took her, then they measured her. I want to say for maybe like 15, 20 minutes, she was still in the room while they were like doing all the tests. But then I think they came up to me and they were like, okay, we're going to take her now so that we could clean her up and, do whatever they had to do. So, yeah, so something like that. But nonetheless, they took her out of the room, where in your case, she was there with you the whole time and she never left your side. And, I think that's definitely a moment to ponder on, that now I think about and I'm like, I like that. I don't know that I like that other way so much. So you've delivered, you're now chilling. How long did they let you stay there afterwards?
I had to stay a little bit longer because my daughter was low birth weight, slightly, like anything under 5.8 ounces is considered low birth weight, and she was slightly under that. So I think I was there for like 7 hours, but traditionally they would only have kept me and monitored me for 3 hours and then sent me home after that. So yeah, I went home the same day after. So she was born at like around 6:30 in the morning, and then by like, I don't know, 4 or 5 in the early evening, I was on my way home.
Yeah, in the hospital they still
Yeah,
keep you for 2 more days.
I know. So that, I think on my end, I feel like maybe it would have been nice to just have one night of observation or something, but whatever.
Yeah. Were you nervous when they let you, like when they were like, okay, now you're done, now go? Like, what were your emotions with like just
I
departing?
just, it's so funny when I hear her dad talk about like his reaction to me. He's like, you were like Mama Gorilla. You gave birth to the baby and like grabbed her with one arm and were like, all right, ready to go. Let's go do this. And I think,
I
like,
love that.
those first few days after, it really is autopilot. You just know what you need to do to keep your baby alive. I don't really know how else to explain that. So
Hmm.
there were many emotions that I was experiencing. I'm in a place in my life now where I'm starting to learn what it is that I'm feeling at any given moment. So I can't quite put a finger or words right now to exactly what I was feeling. I mean, of course, there was a ton of fear. Ton of fear. I'm an only
Hmm.
child. I didn't grow up raising, baby siblings or baby cousins or, I didn't
Yeah.
grow up alongside my cousins. I had some exposure to babies, but this was like totally uncharted territory.
Yeah.
I was terrified, but was ready. Like, let's just do it. Let's do it. Let's keep this baby alive.
Yeah. No, I relate. I relate to that a lot. And this is something you and I have talked about before as well. I'm also the only child, and I did not grow up raising any cousins or like there were just no babies around me. I actually had never even changed a diaper
Oh wow.
before I had a baby. Um, yeah, no, never, not even once. And I do remember thinking to myself, like, how do you start? How do you go home? How do you know what to do? And it's like, it's funny. Like people always tell you, like my mom said the same thing. She's like, when you come home, you just know. Like there's something inside of you where you just know. And it's literally like what you said. It's a weird thing. It's like marathon. Like you get home and you just know. Like something inside of you, I guess it's like the same part of you that told you that you needed to push when it was time. Your body's like, okay, this is what you do now. And in a strange way, the screams go from being completely like you have no idea what they want to almost within a matter of like 24 hours you're like, oh, you're crying because you're hungry, oh, you're crying because you're tired. And it's really amazing how that
It is.
happens.
It's amazing. It's
It just kicks in.
powerful. It's humbling. It's a journey, It's a whole other journey. And you really, I mean, sure, you could prepare, but there's no way to prepare, really. Right? I don't know. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But
Can you believe that? It's 2.5. Can you believe it's been two and a
no.
half years?
You said before, like, oh, the time moves quicker, or like you can't measure the time. And I'm like, what is time now? Right? This idea of time being linear, and you and I can go on and on about like all this trippy stuff, but I think having a child is the quickest way to understand that our concept of time is extremely limited, because so much is happening so quickly, and yet time is standing still at the same time. I don't know. It's like powerful.
Well, it's like that phrase. It's like a phrase that they say, like when you have a kid, it's like your days are long, but your
Yeah,
years are short. Because the day's super, super long. And then you look back and you're like, how has it been a whole year already? Because every day just has been feeling so much to do, so much to remember, so many things to tend to. And then it's boom, they're 2.5. And you're like, how do
that's
we get here?
exactly it. That was such a great little bite on on exactly what it feels like.
Yeah, interesting. So, what's the reason that you want to share this? Like, what's the reason that you feel like, people should understand the experience of natural birth. What's the reason that you wanted to share your story with me today?
I think going through the whole process of working with midwives and doulas is something that 1000% changed my life outside of just giving birth and having a baby, right? But just going through the experience of being surrounded by so many women who were so giving and loving and supportive and strong and knowledgeable, and I could go on and on about how positive my experience was, that I feel responsible and compelled to continue that in any way that I can. You know, I'm not a midwife, I'm not a doula, I'm by no means an expert, but if I can, through sharing my experience, help someone learn something or want to explore other options, then I feel that's my duty now. And I really hope that no matter what route women choose to go down when they are embarking on this incredible life-changing experience, that they feel empowered, whichever direction they go in. And they can only feel empowered with knowledge, and more now, especially, it feels even more important and necessary that we open up and have more conversations and more connections with each other, because really at the end of the day, like, the power is in our hands.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you. It's like the power's in
And
our
in our
hands
bodies.
and in our bodies, right? It's our personal choice. I did think of one other thing I wanted to ask you while you were saying that. Would you say, and I feel like we touched on this a little bit, when I asked you what the opinions of people were around you when you
Mm-hmm.
chose to go this route versus like the traditional route, would you say that there is an overall kind of stigma in the idea of natural birth?
I think it sort of depends on what communities you're talking to in regards to stigma. I think a lot of what we see in mainstream media makes it so that you feel like it's stigmatized, or that there might be more hesitancy to pursue natural alternatives. But actually, from being in the world, there are so many people that I met, and moms and Instagram pages and hashtags and all of these different avenues that I've been exposed to, where the community is actually pretty large of people who are actively seeking alternative options. And then also, I feel like there's more conversations being had around this now. I think COVID, the reality that a lot of women had to face with giving birth by themselves in hospital settings, and that kind of, like, I don't know if this is the right word, but it's what I can think of right now, like the weaponization of giving birth by going to a hospital and, like, potentially having no control over what position you're in or whether or not you have a partner in the room. I feel like I'm losing my train of thought.
No, 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 I hear you. And also just a lot of sort of unclear
Yeah.
procedures. Like what we were just talking about, how they took the baby away, right, after I gave birth to her. And in hindsight, they told me what they were doing, but do I really know? I mean, I guess, you choose to trust the process. So I get where you're going. It's like the systematic aspect of it versus the natural feels more kind of free
Right.
flowing and going with just listening to your body and accommodating it and what it needs to do versus this is the process, this is how we do it, we don't care who you are, what you look like, this is the process and this is how we do
Yes.
it.
And then your question too was, what do I think about the attitudes towards natural childbirth alternatives? And I will say that yes, there are people who still have a fear of going this route. And I think podcasts like this and conversations that are shared among people will help provide knowledge so that hopefully there's less fear, And now that you have more knowledge with both options, you can make better decisions about what you think feels best for you and your body and your baby. And that's the most important thing, is get yourself educated as much as possible, expose yourself as much as you can to this other like world of information, just so that you feel the most confident walking into the whole experience that you can.
Yeah. No, I think that was a great way to sum it up.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing your story with me. I really appreciate you and
Thanks.
your time. And it's like you said, it's all educating ourselves, and educating ourselves not only on like reading an article about it on the internet, but actually hearing an actual genuine experience from a person who went through it and what it was like for them, and someone who is thinking about becoming pregnant or is currently pregnant. They can listen to this and go, okay, well, now I know the facts of how it goes, and I can kind of decide what is the better route for me.